right, welcome back. Today, I got my guy, VP of Product at Attack Interactive, Stephen Thiel, here with me, and we're going to do volume 2 of the HubSpot Salesforce integration issues. This time, we're focusing on the initial architecture. So we were talking offline before this video, and I said, what is the most common use case that we get when people say, hey, I need you to fix this HubSpot Salesforce integration? And you said something wasn't set up right to begin with. Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. The common use case we get is when, there isn't the time invested initially to plan out what the architecture of this integration and figuring out which CRM is the source of truth. Where does data is, are we talking one-way syncs, two-way syncs? Do we want everything to pass over? Do we want only like certain qualified leads to go over? So when that planning isn't done initially, and then we turn the integration on, it'll take 3 times as long to kind of unwind that mess then and kind of get it to where a solid baseline moving forward.
So I know we always joke, they make it look very simple. Oh, here we go. Map, here's the integration button, map these fields, everything's great. Now everything should work perfectly, right? And it never does. So what are some of the things that people really get wrong in architecture? What do they not think of? What are the 2 steps ahead that you wish they thought of, but they didn't, that kind of create such a messy situation?
Yeah, I mean, everyone goes right to mapping, and mapping is honestly the easiest part of setting the integration up. And HubSpot makes that very easy to set up. You just pull up your HubSpot properties, you pull up your Salesforce properties, and you map them. Decide, is it a one-way sync, two-way sync? Do you not want the sync at all? That's the easiest part of this. I think where with the common use case we see and where issues come up is when you don't necessarily think through, okay, say HubSpot, commonly you're typically using HubSpot on the marketing side, Salesforce on the sales side, not thinking through what leads you actually want to pass into Salesforce. And then, sales seems cool. They want leads, but they also don't want to get bombarded with hundreds of unqualified leads who are, subscriber lead level. And so not putting the thought into at what point, how qualified does a lead need to be handed over from marketing to sales, and really mapping out that marketing to sales handoff process, so that, both sides are happy and cool. You want to pass all the leads over, go for it. But a lot of times sales wants to wait until they've been qualified. And then it's not just, someone who filled out a newsletter subscription. Um, Outside of that, what we typically see the most of is not necessarily like thinking through, like, okay, which CRM is actually the source of truth? Is it HubSpot? Is it Salesforce? Because then there's going to be properties you don't want to overwrite, and where your data is, the source of truth, and where you're building all your reporting around. But on the flip side, it's also thinking about, data hygiene. That is like the biggest thing you need to think about before you turn this on, because if your Salesforce data is messy, you bring in the HubSpot and you're going to have a messy HubSpot database and vice versa. So we always typically recommend you go through like a data hygiene process and you clean that data up ahead of time. Because once you turn the integration on, all of HubSpot's deduplication features, by, deduping local email or company domain, you can no longer do that once that integration is turned on. And then we commonly see like, whoa, why do we have like hundreds, thousands of duplicate leads in HubSpot or Salesforce? And it's because data was kind of messy to begin with. There was data in HubSpot, there was data in Salesforce. We didn't go through that like initial alignment process to align both databases before we turn the integration on.
Yeah, I think messy data typically ends up being a big trigger for a lot of this stuff, right? If the data is great, which has never happened to anyone ever, I don't know anyone who's like, oh, our data is perfect. It's awesome. We've got everything figured out there. And so getting that right certainly seems like the first step, but it also can be kind of a daunting task. Is there a way to be able to make that less scary? We've got this massive database of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands in some cases. We know it's messy, but we don't know exactly how it's messy. And it sounds like such a headache to even start. How is it? What are some of the strategies we use to try and make that a little less intimidating?
Yeah, it can definitely be intimidating. We typically take the approach of like doing an export out of each of the yeah, out of each one out of HubSpot, one out of Salesforce, and getting that into Excel. It's a lot easier for us to typically like visualize messy data when it's sitting in a spreadsheet. And this does require a little some more advanced Excel skills. But then doing some VLOOKUPs and kind of trying to align like where we everyone typically has an idea of where their data is messy. Maybe we have duplicate leads, maybe we've got hey, maybe we at one point we were using Sales Hub Plus, we were using Salesforce, and now we might have duplicate deals, or we used different naming conventions for deals. Another common use case is like this is parent-child relationships. We see this a lot with especially with our B2B clients. They might work with a parent company, and under that parent company, they could have 50, 60, 70, 80 different locations. Um, and typically, like, what we'll see is like they're all there on, say, the Salesforce side, but there's no domains on any of them because they all share one domain. They don't have separate domains. And so once you get that into a spreadsheet, it's a lot easier to visualize it and do some VLOOKUPs and clean it up and then re-import back to both of them, because then from the get-go, like the data is matching and it's clean on both sides. And then you can go and turn that integration on.
Okay. So going back to the idea that you just need to get it right to begin with, the initial architecture. Let's say you're not going to hire a third party vendor and you're that person in charge of getting this right. And you are essentially the architect to make sure that Salesforce and HubSpot speak to each other the way that they need to be spoken. What are some tips you would give this architect to make sure they get it right and they don't accidentally make some mistakes and have to call us 6 months later?
Yeah, I would say start off with a lucid chart or presentation, whatever works best for you, and really document what that marketing to sales handoff process looks like. When are we passing leads over? Which CRM is the source of truth? And just having that foundation initially built out and having that map, because then you can live and die by that process map and get it built out that way. Definitely is step one. Aligning marketing and sales on like what each CRM is going to be doing, and having some pre-planning meetings of both sides, because they have marketing and sales aren't always aligned. They have different thoughts on what a qualified lead is, what involvement marketing has once a lead becomes an SQL. Do they co-op marketing at that point? Do they still have an enrollment in some nurture workflows or blast emails? And so having that alignment initially goes a long way, because then we know, everyone knows which way the boat is rowing, and we can set that integration can be set up. And then really just like taking a step back and pulling that export out. Even if you don't have advanced Excel skills, you could do some quick lookups just to kind of see, like, do we have a lot of leads or that don't have any email addresses? Cool. Now we know we can't dedupe based off email address. Do we have a lot of companies that don't have domain names? All right. Now we know we can't dedupe based off that. If that's a little daunting, there are tools out there you can use. We're a huge fan of Incycle. It's a great integration that kind of sits above both HubSpot and Salesforce, and will help a lot with that with data hygiene. And if you think you do have a lot of duplicate data, it's pretty quick and inexpensive to use a tool like Incycle to clean up that duplicate data. And then Incycle can sit on top of that integration once it's turned on. While HubSpot, will disable their dedupe features, Incycle can still be there for you. It just kind of sits high level, but it's a really good tool for those who don't want to spend all of that time on the Excel side and kind of aligning it, and have a tool that we can map out different parameters where we think there could be dedupes and let Incycle do its thing.
All right, there you go. So getting the initial architecture right, recognizing that the easy button inside of HubSpot to connect the two, even the field mapping, very, very easy things to do, but just baseline in actions that you take for something that's much bigger. And so you got to really think through the whole thing. You want to understand the vision of how everything works together first, then work backwards to do all the steps to make sure that you get it right. And even then, there might just be something you uncover a couple months later, and you got to call somebody like us to come untangle it. So good luck with that architecture. We know it's not easy. We want to make sure we give you guys the best tips that we can. Stephen, thanks so much for your insights there, and good luck to everybody on that initial architecture.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
That's it for today. If you like what you see, give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit subscribe so you can see our latest videos as soon as they drop. We really appreciate you watching. See you next time.